Yeah, the policy, somewhat like in Vietnam, the military policy in the Philippines changed 2 or 3 times. The first part of the war was more conventional war. The Philippine Republic had an army, they had a constitution, they had taxes. I don't think most Americans knew that at the time. They thought they were fighting a bunch of savages. And certainly in A Moment in the Sun, one of the things that you see is the media of the time, including the political cartoonists, that from the beginning of the conflict, when the Filipinos were still our allies against the Spanish, they were drawn as something close to a Cuban or a Mexican, off-white, raggedy clothes, straw hat, and then within weeks of the beginning of the Philippine-American War, they were drawn as coal-black savages with grass skirts and bones in their nose and crazy hair and wooden spears. What happened at the very beginning was there was a conventional war, which the Filipinos lost, badly because they had no artillery, among other things, and were very badly trained and armed. And then it turned after the first year into a guerrilla war. This is the beginning of the guerrilla war, when there was at least an attempt at first to win the hearts and minds of the people. That's a phrase that goes back to Teddy Roosevelt and even further back to the Bible. We associate it with Vietnam, but it gets resurrected not just by Americans, but by other people whenever they occupy a country. When that doesn't work out, there's usually a second phase, which is the kind of tough love Hamletization, we called it in Vietnam. In the Philippines, it meant usually surrounding people with barbed wire, killing all their carabao, burning their rice fields, and saying, from now on you eat American canned goods like our soldiers do, so we can keep track of you. And that's common in most wars of occupation, not just American wars of occupation.
We did get a question in advance on Facebook from Carlo Angelo Vargas, who asks you, how important was it as an American filmmaker to shed light on the Philippine-American War in your film Amigo?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think it's important to know how we got where we are, how we got where we are in our relationships with other countries, where we got where we are psychologically as Americans, and a lot went on in this very, very short period. I think for Filipinos, and as we've been starting to show Amigo in the Philippines, I think the important thing is this very important part of Philippine history has kind of been robbed from the people. And only recently have Philippine historians been able to resurrect some of it, to know that Filipinos resisted, that they had a Philippine Republic in 1898, that they had their own constitution, partly based on the U.S. Constitution. What was usually taught in Philippine schools for years and years and years was, oh, the Spanish were here for 300 years, and then they sold us to the Americans for $20 million. Leaving out this resistance, leaving out, the very important part that there was a Philippine Republic that was disappeared very quickly.
Is this period, this critical period at the cusp of the 20th century, an allegory to what's happening today in Iraq and Afghanistan? I
think it's unavoidably allegorical to almost any kind of occupation. Certainly Amigo could have been set in France during the Nazi occupation, in Algeria during the French occupation, in Vietnam during the French, Japanese, or American occupation. Those kind of situations where the occupying force is more powerful, has more technology, doesn't really understand the culture or care to understand the culture that much, and has very, very specific goals that they're trying to get across. You're going to have these situations. You're going to have people who are caught in between. You're going to have usually a local group who's willing to work with the occupying force because they never got along with the local population. In the Philippines, it was a group called the Macabebes. It might have been the Crow Indian fighting against the Sioux. When Cortez invaded Mexico, most of his shock troops were indigenous people, not Spaniards. Those things occur over and over and over and over. And I think that, for just a citizen, one of the things that I think you should be able to take from history is ammunition to make you suspicious, to make you ask the second question and not just accept the first thing you hear from anybody.
Legendary filmmaker John Sayles. His new book is called A Moment in the Sun. His film Amigo just opened in the Philippines, where John Sayles is right now. When we come back, we speak with John Sayles about Matewan, about the return of the Seacaucus Seven and his other films. Stay with us.